So I want you to picture something for a second. You're standing in this absolutely gorgeous, high-end beauty store.
Yeah, like the really intimidating ones with the perfect lighting and the marble counters.
Exactly. The shelves are just lined with these minimalist, heavy glass jars. But then imagine that entire visual it just sort of dissolves, and
Yeah.
suddenly you're standing in a really bustling, totally sterile chemistry lab. People in lab coats, massive steel vats, clipboards everywhere.
That is quite the scene change.
Right. But that's exactly the journey we're taking today. Welcome to today's deep dive. We're getting into the literal chemistry and the business machinery behind the beauty industry.
It is such a fascinating hidden world.
It really is. And we have an amazing stack of notes today. We are pulling directly from a resource called Own Label Cosmetics, a comprehensive guide to launching your private label brand.
Yeah, that's the April 2026 publication by Laurent Fabian.
Yep, from the wellness innovator, Ingredientsage. And honestly, this deep dive is completely custom tailored for you, the learner. If you've ever wanted the ultimate shortcut to understanding the explosive world of private label beauty, you are in the exact right place.
Because it's not a simple process.
Yeah.
The gap between having a cool idea for a serum and actually getting it onto that marble counter is huge.
It's massive. Our mission today is to uncover how brands get from that abstract concept in someone's head to a physical bottle on a shelf. We're talking turning complex chemistry and some seriously strict global regulations into a profitable business.
Which is, well, it's not for the faint of heart.
No, definitely not. I think a good way to frame it right from the start, a good analogy is that launching an own label cosmetic brand is, it's a lot like being a film director.
Oh, I like that.
Right, because you aren't actually building the cameras, you aren't acting in the scenes yourself, but you completely own the final narrative and the vision.
Right, you're the one holding the whole picture together.
Exactly. You are entirely relying on these trusted production partners, your labs, your regulatory expert, to make the magic happen. But at the end of the day, it's your movie.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is how much that director's role has changed. Like, if you look at the private label beauty segment in 2026, it's completely evolved.
It's not just buying a generic vat of lotion anymore.
No, not at all. A decade ago, maybe you could just slap your logo on a basic moisturizer and call it a day. But now, it's a highly sophisticated industry.
Totally.
And that's largely because consumer demands have totally rewired the baseline. People want transparency, they want clean formulations, and they demand sustainability.
Right, which brings up a huge point from the source material. These things, clean beauty, vegan formulas, ethically sourced ingredients, they are not just fun marketing claims anymore.
No, they're strict consumer expectations.
Exactly. They literally dictate whether retailers will even bother stocking your product.
But okay, let's unpack this for a second.
Yeah, because if I walk down any skincare aisle right now, literally every single brand is claiming to be clean or sustainable.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
So if it's just this massive echo chamber, how does a new private label brand actually stand out? Like, how do you prove it without just sounding like everyone else?
Well, the real differentiator now is traceability. Consumers and retail buyers, for that matter, they've evolved. They don't just trust a green leaf logo anymore.
Right, they want receipts.
Exactly. Traceability means you have the mechanical, documented proof of your entire supply chain. It means investing in rigorous supplier audits. It means having third-party testing for your ingredients.
So it's about having that robust documentation that you can literally hand over to a retailer or an inspector.
Exactly. Companies that do that are seeing much higher consumer confidence and way higher repeat purchase rates.
Because, when you're browsing the aisles, you're looking for proof, not just promises.
Right.
So as a brand creator, you can't just tack that on at the end. You have to build that proof into your supply chain from day one.
You absolutely have to. The
Yeah.
supply chain is essentially the foundation of your transparency.
Which organically leads us to the next massive step, finding the actual manufacturing partner to build that chain with.
Yeah, and before you even start looking at factories, the text outlines this whole strategic planning phase.
Right. You can't just dive in blind.
No, you have to define your target product categories first. Are you doing skincare, color cosmetics, hair care? Because they all have vastly different requirements.
Makes sense.
And you have to set a price tier and build a phased roadmap to actually track your ROI, your return on investment, against each iteration of the product.
And once you have that roadmap, you have to pick your players.
No.
The text breaks down these 3 distinct geographic supplier profiles, and honestly, reading through it felt like picking character classes in a video game.
That's a great way to look at it, actually.
Right, so let's run through them. Say I want to iterate really quickly. I've got a complex active ingredient, and I need fast QA and short lead times.
Then you're looking at supplier A. That's a US-based CMO, a contract manufacturing organization.
Okay, so the US is for speed and control.
Exactly. They are great for in-house stability testing. And they often have advanced tech, like microencapsulation.
Oh, wait, let's talk about that, microencapsulation, because the source brings that up, and it's wild. What is that?
It is wild. So if you have a really volatile active ingredient like vitamin C or certain retinols, they break down super fast when they hit light or air.
Right, they just oxidize and go bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So microencapsulation literally wraps those delicate active molecules in a microscopic polymer shell.
Like a tiny suit of armor?
Yes, a tiny suit of armor that keeps it stable in the bottle, and it only breaks open when the consumer actually rubs it into their skin.
That is so cool. Okay, so that's the US CMO, highly regulated, fast, high-tech. But what if my whole brand identity is about being the absolute gold standard of clean label prestige?
Then you go to supplier B, which is an EU cosmetics ODM, an original design manufacturer.
European Union.
Right. The EU is a go-to for rigorous standards. They give you access to European clean label ingredients, like the ones that are Cosmos certified.
And they provide those ready-to-market dossiers that are already perfectly aligned with EU regulations, right?
Exactly. It's essentially baking compliance right into the product's DNA.
Okay, so US is for agility, EU is for bulletproof clean beauty prestige. What's the third option? Let's say I want massive scale, natural ingredients, and I need to keep costs down.
That brings you to supplier C, the APAC facilities, Asia Pacific.
Gotcha.
They are heavily focused on scalable production. They are fantastic at doing small batch test runs and then rapidly scaling up to huge volume. And they're highly cost efficient, specifically for vegan and natural private label lines.
Okay, so if I want to iterate quickly, I go US. If I want prestige clean label, I go EU. If I want scalable vegan volume, I go APAC.
But, and this is a big bug, but isn't managing an overseas partner a massive risk for a brand new company?
It absolutely can be. You're basically handing over the physical creation of your brand to someone you might only ever see on a video call. Right, like how do you know they aren't cutting corners?
This is where the due diligence checklist from the source text becomes absolutely vital. You can't just trust. You have to verify.
What are we verifying exactly?
Well, first, you verify their current CGMP, that's current good manufacturing practices.
Which is the legal standard for facility hygiene and processes, right?
Exactly. You check their cleanroom standards, you look for ISO certifications, you make sure they have proper supply chain insurance and actual recall handling procedures in place.
God forbid you need them.
Exactly. But maybe the most important thing you audit is their change control process.
Oh yeah, the change control. Explain why that is so critical, because it sounds like a minor administrative thing.
It sounds minor, but it can ruin you. Imagine your manufacturer suddenly can't source the specific organic glycerin you agreed on.
Okay.
Without a strict change control process, they might just quietly swap it out for a synthetic glycerin from a different supplier just to keep the production line moving.
Without telling you.
Exactly. And suddenly your brand is violating its own vegan or organic marketing claims. A strict change control process legally forces them to notify you and test any new material before making a substitution.
Wow. Okay, so you really have to audit their integrity just as much as their machinery.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got our manufacturing partner locked in. Here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Transitioning from the factory floor to the actual chemistry of it.
Formulation process.
Right, because I think a lot of people assume developing a formula is just, picking a nice base lotion from a catalog and asking them to make it smell like lavender.
Yeah, the reality is a wildly complex balancing act. You're collaborating with seasoned chemists to force chemicals that naturally hate each other to coexist.
Like oil and water.
Exactly. Most creams are emulsions, oil, and water mixed together, but they naturally separate. So your formulator has to balance emulsifiers, emollients for texture, the active ingredients, colorants, preservatives.
It's a massive chemical puzzle. And if you change one thing, it throws off the whole matrix.
Exactly. Which is why the text emphasizes the start small strategy.
Yes. Don't launch with 50 different products on day one.
Right. Start with a small number of core SKU stock-keeping units. You need to validate your supplier's performance and see how consumers actually respond before you tie up all your capital.
It makes total sense. Minimize the risk. But I've got a question about this. We all have that one jar of moisturizer that's been sitting in our bathroom for like 3 years, right?
Oh, definitely.
How do these brands actually know that a brand new formula won't just separate into a gross puddle? Or worse, start growing mold after 6 months on a warm shelf?
Well, it all comes down to the QA/QC framework, quality assurance and quality control,
Yeah.
and specifically stability testing.
Right. But they don't just put a jar on a desk and wait 3 years to see what happens,
Yeah.
right? That would kill the time to market.
No, they use accelerated stability testing. They expose the product to different extremes, high temperatures, intense UV light exposure to simulate years of aging in just a few months.
So they basically time travel the formula by cooking it.
Basically, yeah. If the emulsion holds together in a thermal chamber at 45 degrees Celsius for 3 months, the kinetic models show it'll be stable for years at room temperature.
That is wild.
And then there's microbial limits testing. They will literally inoculate the product with aggressive strains of bacteria and fungi to prove that the preservative system can actively fight off contamination.
And there was a note in the text about packaging compatibility, too, which I thought was fascinating. Checking to make sure the formula doesn't just eat its own container.
Oh, it's a huge issue. The principle of like dissolves like. Certain active ingredients or strong essential oils can actually melt or warp the plastic polymer of the bottle over time.
So you can have a perfectly stable cream that literally turns its own jar to mush.
Yep. Cultivating a real quality culture with your partners early on is what prevents those disastrous recalls.
Wow. Okay, so we've got a stable, beautiful, mold-free product. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, a perfectly formulated serum is totally useless if it is illegal to sell.
Transitioning from the lab to the law.
Exactly, and the global regulatory maze is no joke. The source compares 3 really distinct frameworks, and I want to run through them.
Go do.
So, starting with the U.S., it's governed by the FDA, but what surprised me in the notes is that there are absolutely no pre-market approvers required.
Right. You don't have to submit your formula to the government to get permission to launch.
Which sounds great, right? Super fast, but it's sort of an innocent until proven guilty market.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
You can launch fast, but you better have your paperwork ready if you're asked. The burden of safety substantiation, correct labeling, the responsible person declarations, that is entirely on you. If a customer has a bad reaction and you don't have your safety data on file, you are incredibly liable.
The liability is massive. And then you compare that to the EU, governed by Regulation 1223/2009.
Right, which operates totally differently. It's like a highly secure nightclub, right? Where you need to show 3 forms of ID just to get past the bouncer.
Yeah. Exactly. It's a pre-market compliance model. They have incredibly rigorous safety standards. You cannot legally sell a product without an exhaustive safety dossier and strict substantiation of all your claims.
And they mandate the INCI naming system, right? The International Nomenclature of Cosmetic Ingredients.
Yes. Everyone, everywhere, has to use the exact same standardized chemical names on the label.
So a dermatologist in Berlin and a consumer in New York both know exactly what's in the bottle.
Precisely. And then, of course, you have the UK.
Right, post-Brexit.
Yeah, post-Brexit, the UK has added its own distinct layer of labeling and traceability expectations.
So for you listening, this is exactly why having comprehensive safety data, meticulous batch records, and cross-border regulatory playbooks are non-negotiable if you're trying to scale a brand globally.
You cannot just wing it with international law.
Definitely not. Okay, so we've got the formula, we've navigated the legal maze. Now we need to talk about the outer shell, the packaging, and, of course, the bottom line.
The financials.
Yes. But starting with packaging, the source notes a really heavy shift towards sustainable materials. We're talking PCR, post-consumer, recycled plastics glass, paper-based labels.
Yeah, the industry is trying hard to move away from virgin plastic.
But the most interesting trend to me was the push for refillable or bulk dispensing configurations.
It's a huge trend to reduce obsolescence risk and waste.
It sounds incredibly sustainable, but, and maybe I'm overthinking this, doesn't a refillable jar directly conflict with what we just talked about regarding microbial testing?
This is a very valid concern.
Like, if I'm scooping cream out of a jar with my fingers every day, and then I buy a refill pouch and squeeze new cream into that same unwashed, damp jar, aren't I just creating a bacteria farm?
You're identifying the major tension point in sustainable beauty right now. Packaging must never compromise product integrity or interfere with the INCI readability.
So how do brands actually solve that?
The solution the text highlights is developing a modular packaging system.
A modular system, what does that look like?
So instead of a messy refill pouch, the brand designs a beautiful, durable outer shell, maybe made of glass or heavy metal.
Okay, the permanent part.
Right. But the actual product comes in a sealed, sterile, disposable inner cartridge. And these cartridges almost always use an airless pump mechanism.
Oh, where the little piston pushes the product up from the bottom?
Exactly. A vacuum pulls the product up, air never enters the chamber, your fingers never touch the bulk of the cream. When it's empty, you pull the recyclable plastic cartridge out and snap a fresh, sterile one into the luxury shell.
That is brilliant. It scales perfectly with line extensions, preserves the brand continuity, and totally solves the contamination issue.
It's engineering solving a chemistry and sustainability problem all at once.
I love that. But of course, and here comes the reality check, what does all of this mean for the bank account? Custom modular packaging, clinical stability testing, European regulatory dossiers?
It is not cheap, which is why you have to be clinically precise with your COGS, the cost of goods sold.
Right. You can't just guess your margins based on the price of the raw materials.
Not at all. A granular COGS calculation includes the raw botanical extracts, yes, but also the airless pump packaging, the manufacturing line time, the QA microbial testing, and the logistics of shipping across the ocean.
And the text makes a big point about running sensitivity analyses on those financial projections.
Because the global market is volatile.
Exactly. A sensitivity analysis basically stress tests your business model. Like, what if the cost of raw shea butter spikes by 20%? Or what if you're using an EU manufacturer and the exchange rate suddenly shifts against you?
Right. If you don't model those cross-border exchange rate fluctuations into your pricing from day one, a minor currency shift can completely wipe out your profit margin.
It's wild how fragile it can be if you aren't prepared. Which brings us to the final phase, the actual launch and the governance roadmap.
Getting it out into the world.
Yes. And the key concept here is launching a minimum viable line. Don't overextend. And once you launch, you have to track very specific KPIs, key performance indicators.
Yeah, you're tracking your time to market, you're tracking your initial sell-through rate at retail.
And the first pass quality rate, right? How many batches come off the line perfectly without needing to be thrown away?
Exactly. And you're tracking your early revenue traction by channel comparing your direct-to-consumer sales against your wholesale performance.
But then this is crucial. The work doesn't stop once the product is on the shelf. The expert source emphasizes this idea of ongoing governance.
Yes. It's the unglamorous part of sustaining a profitable brand.
Conducting those regular supplier audits every year. Doing quarterly reviews of your 6U performance. If a product isn't selling, you don't keep pouring marketing money into it, you cut it.
And monitoring those evolving regulations.
Yeah.
An ingredient that is totally fine today might get restricted in the EU next year.
Exactly. Which is why partnering with end-to-end providers like Ingredientsage offers such a reliable path to market. They manage that insane web of ongoing compliance so the brand creator can actually focus on the marketing and the narrative.
They handle the headache so you can direct the movie.
Perfectly said. As we wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with a lingering thought to kind of mull over.
Yeah.
Think about that beauty aisle again. When you pick up a stunning, minimalist luxury serum that costs $150, and then you walk a few aisles over and pick up a $20 budget clean beauty lotion.
Yeah.
I want you to consider the fact that they very well might have been born in the exact same APAC, ODM, or EU facility.
They could be utilizing the exact same core stability profiles and emulsifiers.
Exactly. The difference between those two bottles isn't always the chemistry. Often it's the strategic blueprint. It's the depth of the transparency, the innovation in the modular packaging, and the narrative.
The story they chose to tell.
Right. So the next time you buy a cosmetic, ask yourself, are you really paying for a revolutionary new ingredient, or are you paying for an impeccably executed private label masterclass?
That is a great question to end on.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. See you next time.